Everybody, welcome to Kettlebell Corner. I'm your host, Jeremiah Whalen, with my co-host, Roger Parks. And today we have a very special guest. We have Brett Jones. He is the Director of Education for Strong First. He's been teaching and training with kettlebells along with many other modalities for the better part of 2+ decades and has contributed so much to the development and training of anyone practicing kettlebells, especially hardstyle technique. You can check his stuff out directly on the Strong First website. Get a glimpse into his daily training on Instagram at Brett Jones SFG. And he has a cat just like us. Brett, welcome. And thank you for joining Kettlebell Corner. Is there anything you want to add to share with the people?
No, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to be here today to speak to you guys and your audience, and looking forward to getting into it.
Awesome. I'll start it off then. I want to talk a little bit about your skill practice and the simplicity you use. I know training is different for everyone, and the simple approach can often be the best. Why did you choose the simple approach, and why does that resonate? And how can you advocate for other people to practice this way?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, in essence, I'm kind of a minimalist at heart, and try to if one thing will give me 5, I don't go looking for the other 4. So I've always been somebody that, and this is going to sound like a left turn, but that's me in a nutshell. I'm a series of left turns. So basically, from a decision-making standpoint, and this is an old conversation with Craig Marker, there are satisfiers and analyzers. And satisfiers, basically, they know what they're looking for. They go in, they find it, they buy it, they go home. Analyzers are going to have the spreadsheet of the, all of the different reviews and the pros and the cons, and they're going to lay it out. They're going to know all the details. I'm a satisfier. I'm not an analyzer. Like the stove that we bought, which is far from perfect in hindsight and several years down the road, it's far from perfect. But basically, I walked into like a Lowe's and I was like, looked at price points, and I'm like, Paul called somebody over and said, people like this stove? She goes, yeah, it's pretty popular. I'm like, cool, I'll take it. That was the beginning and the end of my thought process as far as me needing a stove. So if I'm, and that's pretty much me in a nutshell across my life. So if I can find something, like I said, for one that gives me 5, I'm good. I'll do that one thing. I'll accept the fact that I'm going to get the other 4 without having to go pursue them. And that's been, one of the reasons kettlebell training applied or appealed to me so much is it started checking boxes. And I think we're all familiar with the what the heck effect and the fact that, people started practicing swings, and all of a sudden their pull-ups went up and they started doing cleans and presses, and their one-arm push-ups got better. And, this kind of thing that if you look at it from a very exercise sciencey standpoint and specificity and how we're going to get transfer and carryover, it like boggles people's minds that you can do this one thing and get better at things that you're not practicing. And that's been one of the biggest reasons is I know that I can have this very simple practice and get great transfer and carryover to even things that I'm not practicing.
Yeah, that's definitely good. I can appreciate that. For sure.
So I've got one for you. One of the things that fascinates me is the difference in some of the coaching, the thinking styles that I've gotten with my Strong First experience. The difference between a level 1 and a level 2 cert. And I think you've done, what have you done? Like maybe 2 certifications by now, and I'm sure it's dozens and dozens and dozens. So having done as many as you have, I'm curious what you're looking for in the difference between an SFG 1 versus 2. Is it really just about a handful of skills, or are there different qualities you're looking for, different attributes? Because I really noticed a significant difference in the way I was coached and taught between the 2 levels.
Level 1's the entrance exam, right? It's far more of a physical challenge. We've only got 3 days with you. So, and really 2.5, if we're talking about the time that we can actually start making change with you to get you to standard form and to embracing some of the coaching and skills and drills that we use. And so level one is designed to be more of a physical challenge to, and that physical challenge is designed to, at the end of day one, you're tired and sore. At the end of day two, you're like, what just happened? And then on day three, it all actually comes together. And so the pressure that you're put under is very purposeful. So in that situation, I'm looking for somebody who's very coachable. I'm looking for somebody that is going to embrace and take these things to heart and be able to start developing their coach's eye and be able to spot flaws and apply an appropriate drill or skill to change that thing that they've identified. By the time you come back for level two, we're expecting to be able to give you some higher level coaching information. We're expecting you to pass your level one research and get caught up on some of the progressions that have occurred since you got certified. And then once we get into the level two progressions, we cover some coaching techniques and things that can't really apply in level one, like we do the mirroring within teaching the jerk and push press. And so there's some higher level coaching things that start getting involved there. And then the athletic drills kind of take us out of our symmetrical stance sort of positions and start getting us moving in some dynamic fashions. So really, we're expecting you to come back in ready for that higher level information to still be coachable and things like that. So I think level one, more of a physical challenge, level two, a little more of a mental challenge.
Okay. Now, as far as if you're looking for, what are you looking for specifically with people and their ability to coach? So let's say I'm someone at home and I'm looking for a kettlebell coach. Level one, level two. What differences should I expect between the two?
Level two is just going to have more tools in the toolbox, so to speak. The biggest thing that we want people to develop is their coach's eye. I want you to be able to look at somebody's technique and spot the flaw, and sometimes it's not the obvious flaw. It's at level ones and level twos, I have upriver and downriver conversations. If you're catching the downriver result of a flaw, that's great. Can you spot the upriver cause? And so I want those coaches that are willing to open their eyes, watch the movement, be wrong at the cert, be wrong, make the wrong call, and let us guide you into looking at those techniques in a little bit different way. So, in the end, across the board, it all comes down to coachability, and then the ability to have that coach's eye and look. I think I made the analogy on a podcast recently. I want to be a sniper, not a shotgun. I want to look at somebody's technique and dial in on exactly what that person needs to change, instead of going, well, you could change this and look at this and this could happen and that could happen.
Yeah, because that's also when you get all those things at once. It's very helpful.
Yeah. It's feeding frenzy on social media when you put up the request for, hey, somebody look at my swing, and I'm like, oh no,
here we go. It's
here it comes.
Go ahead.
No, and then I get on and say, yeah, just finish tall. Just finish nice and tall. You're on your way. So.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to get into the social media thing. I think you answered my question on that regarding what you're looking for in a kettlebell coach. But certainly there's a plethora of opinions. When we talk about, I got one kind of in the vein of that, like, let's say we're finishing tall and students that are new to swing and they're doing these swings. A lot of times it comes down to that timing of when their arm leaves their body or reconnects with their body in the hinge. What are some of your best ways to convey that to a new student to have them, exercise that patience for those both those transitions in that swing?
I just tell them to stop not being patient. No, I'm
okay.
Kidding.
Perfect.
Yeah. I use the greatest coaching cue ever. Stop it.
Quit doing what you're doing, please.
Exactly. It's brilliant. Yep. It's there's a Ron Burgundy. There's a Anchorman quote that just popped to mind. Anyway, so really some of the best things there are go back to the air swing, disconnect them from the bell for a moment. It's hard to make changes during a ballistic. Dan John said some time ago, you can't think your way through a ballistic. I can hit a finish position and I can hit a bottom position, it's really hard to make changes on what's happening in between those 2 points. So if I can take that moment to disengage you from the bell, go back to the deadlift as a means of reconnecting those lats and emphasizing that connection, and then take you into the air swing and give you that slow down that rhythm and timing so that you begin to really appreciate just how long you should be waiting before your arms reconnect so that you can hinge appropriately. And then having that delay on the way up. And then I take them into the towel swing. And the towel swing, because again, disconnecting you from the bell forces you to find that rhythm and timing that if you're disconnecting there, you'll usually feel it.
Got it.
So let's use this as a jump off point, because you mentioned both silliness on social media and the idea of hinging. I enjoyed I don't know, was it 2 days ago? The article you put out about the difference between the squat and the hinge on Strong First.
Yeah, I mean, I think it went up on the 14th, but I think we did our social media push on it just recently. Yeah,
got it. So I've read it, but I don't know that anyone or everyone else has. Can you talk about what you're after? What's the point you were making? Why is it important?
So it's something I've run into a lot. So for years, I've been emphasizing the athletic hinge. I want you to bend your knees. If you look at somebody vertical leaping, you will not see an RDL strategy, right? So if we want something that's powerful and athletic and has transfer to other activities, the athletic hinge delivers in those cases. So I've been advocating and trying to get people to bend their knees during their swings for quite some time. And, this thing keeps coming up over and over where people are like, well, you're squatting, you're not hinging. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that I'm hinging. And so, but when you start surfing that continuum of, from a stiff-kneed, stiff-legged kind of RDL style to the more athletic hinge. And then, like I said in the article, you start taking into account body shapes and stuff like that. That's something I've been passionate about teaching at workshops for and certifications for a long time. But then, and it really was that comment on social media where I was like, it was just funny. It was like, you're squatting, not hinging. And then it was like, one of those patronizing, you'll get there, keep at it sort of things. And I'm like, that's cute. And so, but I was like, okay, well, this is obviously like a greater, like I'm not reaching everybody at certs and workshops. So getting that article out and being able to have that conversation of what is a squat or a hinge. And there's different strategies for this. Mike Boyle talks about hip dominant versus knee dominant. Dan John has his, hip continuum. I think there's just different strategies for looking at that. And I've always tried to boil it down into the simplest terms possible. In a squat, your hips go down. In a hinge, your hips go back. And you can pretty clearly, I'm actually going to reshoot the athletic hinge swing versus RDL swing video, because I think with a little different camera angle, it'll be way more apparent of the two different styles. And I just have a body type that everything kind of looks the same. As a powerlifting coach once told me, Brett, you're not built to do anything. And what he meant was I'm not built to specialize in anything. I don't have the long arms that would make me a good deadlifter. I don't have the short arms that would make me a good bench presser. I don't have the femur length that would turn me into a great squatter. But I'm just kind of generally built. And so I was decent at a variety of skills, which is fine with me. I'd rather be the SUV versus the tugboat for myself. So did I answer the question?
I think you did. I've got a little bit of a follow-up. Now, we're talking about knee bending. Are you good with a positive shin angle?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, because this is one of the things. I actually was a victim of online harassment recently. A guy who actually blamed it on RKC and told me I was doing it wrong. And then couldn't explain why, and then apologized profusely and asked me to teach him. But there's a little bit of a conversation going on, like, oh, well, you're allowed to bend the knee, but you can't have a positive shin angle. I personally have never seen a completely vertical shin ever in anyone ever swinging kettlebell. I don't think it's possible. But I think it's really important this message gets out there that, there's certain requirements. There's a reason why I think we want more horizontal displacement versus vertical displacement in the swing. It serves several purposes, but you may not be able to get there without the vertical shin. So I appreciate the clarification there.
Absolutely, and I think that that is such a deep, dark, complicated rabbit hole to dive down, because body structure gets so involved, and it was, I mean, even to the point where Pavel got on a force plate at one point, and pictures were taken, and he was actually surprised to see positive shin angle during his swing, because his intention is vertical. But the reality is, especially at certain loads, that shin angle conversation has to change, because it's not only one of the reasons we see a more squatty or more vertical projection of force in like a heavy double clean is you don't want to get pulled over onto your face. So if you have heavy enough double bells and you actually keep those vertical shins and kind of RDL hinge, there's a good chance you're going to get pulled down on your face. And so your body, being a little smarter than that, kind of naturally adjusts your position some so that you can maintain your center of mass. But yeah, vertical shins can be an intention, but very rarely is reality.
Yeah, I mean, I would think if you have an entirely vertical shin, the only way you may be able to maintain your balance is if you have enough force displacing forward over your base of support. Otherwise, you don't have any purchase with the feet, and you're gonna fall back. You have to. It's simple physics.
Yeah, that's the RDL hinge, right? That's the reason you see people go towards the RDL hinge, is they're so focused towards the vertical shins that they have no choice but to get torso driven,
which they don't get anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And then you go back to the one for five type of thing. And you just say like, hey, if you take this athletic stance and you mentally can get yourself into the athletic position, chances are you're going to be in the right position. And it makes most sense. At least it's translated the best for me and my swings and cleans and snatches and all those wonderful fun things.
Absolutely. And, and as I said in the article, RDL style is not wrong. And there's a reason to go that direction if you need that sort of specific hamstring work, but understand why you're doing it. And the caveat that I threw in there at the end about not seeking a stretch, there's a variety of people, they lean in the more mobile, hypermobile direction, who will choose the RDL style because they feel that stretch in their hamstrings. I'm not stretching right now. I'm swinging.
Yeah.
I don't need to feel the stretch. There's a difference between feeling a load and feeling a stretch. So going to that point of feeling a stretch is actually you're seeking bottom because you proprioceptively have a hard time finding that because you are so mobile or hypermobile. So it's an interesting conversation. And I think when you look at it from that medial hamstring perspective and some of the things that you can accomplish there, yeah, there's some reasons to have an RDL style swing in the repertoire, but in general, athletic hinge and get it done.
Yeah, and I like how you summed that up at the end, where it's like, hey, this is what it works. Maybe add some variety here and there, and be okay with that. And don't seek a feeling, seek an intention, I guess. Yeah. When we talk about cues, what consists of like a good cue for you? And is there any cues that you wish would kind of go away from the teaching of kettlebells?
Well, I'll throw this one out there. The cue that I wish I would go away is that a snatch is a swing that ends at the top.
Thank you. Okay.
Because it's not.
Right.
It is with up to a certain load. Sure, you can do anything you want with the belt. Once you cross a certain load, you better have the vectors of force and everything pretty dialed in to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So and this is from Tim Almond and some of the work we've done on the low pull snatch technique. The snatch is a clean that ends up overhead. And so that shift in mindset there really changes the path of the bell, and really gets people with more vertical work. So was there a cue that I use often in part of that question, or was that just not?
That's pretty good. I will say that as a little jump off on that, and having gone through Strong First level 1 a couple of years ago, and then coming back and doing it here recently, and seeing the evolution of that change to that more low pull and the way that it's taught now, as opposed to that high pull type of feel that it was taught a couple of years ago, is definitely translates well. And you know, being an experienced coach, it was like, yes, I love this. I can really feel this. I can really translate this to my students. And I just know that anybody new there who maybe is learning this for the first time just got some really good, valuable stuff. So, you know, we're in agreement there. We agree, Brett. Thank you for agreeing with us, even though you didn't know that's what we wanted.
Oh, as long as we're staying in our own echo chamber.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually one of those guys. I was, you know, most of our level 1 was self-taught. We didn't, you know, go after a coach. We were just two idiots teaching each other. And we were actually making some serious progress on the snatch. And then I was reading something. It's like, no, a snatch is a swing that ends overhead. I was like, the arm's got to be straight. And, you know, I'm used to generating a fair amount of power with this thing, not dialed in yet, but getting there. And suddenly I straighten my arm, it almost pops straight off. It's like, this can't be right. Anyhow, you know, that brings me to the next thing, which, you know, I get comments from people, you know, when they find out that I'm Strong First certified, like, oh, you seem, you know, you're so open-minded, and you seem like you really want to go after, you know, details. Like, how do you tolerate Strong First? And then, you know, I explained to them, I was actually this organization evolves quite a bit, you know, and you learn that more, you know, level 2 versus level 1. You learn that more as you interact with the better coaches. But can you take us through, and whether you want to use the snatch and low pull or whatever, you know, there are several examples. Can you talk about an idea, how do things evolve? How does it work kind of behind the scenes? Talk about a thing and how that happens.
Well, let's go 30,000 foot first, because the perception is that the organization Strong First is this very immutable, we're right, you're wrong sort of group. And you know, we certainly feel that we have some very good strategies and some good principles and techniques, and you know, we're going to present that in a very straightforward fashion. So that the way that comes off to people is that closed-minded, you know, immutable sort of mindset. But if I'm going to change my mind, it's because a piece of information has been presented that has actually successfully made it through my filters and had an impact. I'm not taking every piece of information that comes my way. I look at that piece of information, I filter it. That's not something I need right now. You know, I can put that to the side, or this isn't a persuasive enough argument for me to change my mind right now. It's not that I'm not listening. And that's the unfortunate thing. I can tell you that from within the organization, I started teaching with Pavel in April of 2003, and at pretty much every certification that we were at, there were lunches where we would sit down with all of the instructors and assistants, and we were collecting information. Okay, what's going well? What's not going well? What do we need to change? And then we'd give somebody an opportunity to teach. They would come up with a different strategy on teaching something, and we're like, boom, that is in the manual. Like, that is absolute gold right there, because it just saved us 3 steps, and we're going to get that person more successful in a more efficient path. So the organization is adaptive, but if we change, it's because we found something that was worth changing for. We're not just, you know, willy-nilly picking stuff off the shelves and trying to throw together, you know, some sort of meal. It's not Guy's Grocery Games. Sorry, during the pandemic, I became a Food Network obsessed person, and Guy's Grocery Games and Chopped and Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives are like most of my TV viewing nowadays. So,
You can get a guy's Halloween costume on his website for like $70 right now. So, as I bop through Halloween costume ideas, just in case that's something for you, Brett, it's out there.
My standard Halloween costume is bacon. I have this bacon outfit, which is just hilarious. Quick story. My street here in Pittsburgh is Halloween obsessed. It's one of the top Halloween towns in the nation. They're crazy. Even though I've lived here for 15 years, I still say they're crazy. Right. So one year I bought this werewolf costume. And so I'm out there. We'll get 200 to 300 kids that'll be on our street on a given Halloween night to get candy, sometimes even more. And so I'm out there in this Halloween outfit with this, scary sort of werewolf head. And this little dude comes bopping down the sidewalk, and he makes the turn up our stairs, and he catches a look at me, and he very quickly made the left turn back down the stairs. And I'm ripping my mask off like, no, it's okay. It's okay. So past that point, I decided bacon, which everyone loves bacon. They may not eat it, but everybody loves it. So now I'm just bacon, and it's a way more accepted costume. What were you talking about?
I think
evolution.
And so that's the evolution of your Halloween costume.
There we go.
I like that.
Exactly.
It all comes full circle.
But yeah, it is because we do stand to our principles and our standards in such a way. There is that perception out there, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And I have to say, because some people get on social media and they start using terms like wrong, you're doing it wrong. I wish people would stop that. Not that I haven't seen people doing stuff wrong on social media. I absolutely have. Right. But that's not how you change people's hearts and minds, right? If somebody walks in and says you're wrong, the walls go up, the defenses go up, and you're a jerk, and it doesn't matter what you do from that point. It usually takes a while to turn that message. And that's why I tend to give very simple cues and suggestions on social media. I'm not going to write you the 10-point bullet list of all the things you need to change and sub bullets that you need, to focus on. I'm going to give you 1 or 2 tips and see if that makes a difference, and move forward from there. And, I'm a big fan of the compliment sandwich. Hey, that's some really great work on your swings. I really think you could finish taller during your swing, find that standing plank, but man, just great effort. And I really think you're going to make some progress on your swings. And
tried and true. It's tried and true, that's why it exists. I think, I would say that one of the things that kind of just supporting that discussion about the principles and these things within the Strong First, those things are there as a good guide and are a really good place to then think beyond. And I really do appreciate that. And, in my experience with going through the certifications, both level 1 and level 2, it's the principles that get rooted, which allow you to have a base to stand on, and then kind of begin to explore with your own movement and stuff like that. And that's really solid.
Absolutely.
Speaking of some more things that are kettlebell related, the snatch test is something that everybody who's going to get some sort of kettlebell certification, and we'll just use Strong First since it's pretty obvious that's going to happen. What are some things that you suggest? And I did, for anybody listening, I did your SFG1 prep for, I don't know, several weeks, 8 weeks maybe, leading up to it. I cycled through those workouts, did the snatch density stuff, and then I included some other things that I personally did to help me prepare for the snatch test. What do you recommend for people preparing leading up to the test? And then what do you recommend for people on the day of the exam? Like when they announce, hey, the snatch test is going to happen in like 10 minutes. Here's your group. This is what I'm thinking. What do you suggest for people?
So number one is patience. If you short your time to prepare, you're going to have problems. I don't care how good your strategy is from that point forward. So planning and patience have got to kick in at a certain point. Know when that's coming. The thing that I would add to the SFG1 prep program is a timeless strategy to use. And for those that don't know, it's 10 sets of 10, and you start the clock when you start your first set. You take as much rest as you need between sets till you can pass the talk test. And then you stop the clock when you've finished your last set of 10. And that sets a much better baseline for where you are. And I've had a lot of people implementing this, and they'll start at between 15 to 20 minutes to get those 10 sets of 10 done, and then all of a sudden they just start dropping time. And by the time you're knocking off your timeless snatches within let's say 6 to 7 minutes, you're within spitting distance of the snatch test. If somebody walked in the room and said, do it now or else, you'd be able to knock it out. So I think the timeless strategy is something that I would absolutely add. Snatching heavier than you need to for low reps, so that you have, let's face it, and this is one of the biggest misinterpretations or misperceptions of hardstyle, right? Is that every rep is just this gut busting. And, somebody even put on social media at some point, like, if it doesn't look ugly, it's not hardstyle. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not it at all. Jordan taking off from the free throw line was not ugly. It was freaking amazing and beautiful. And that's what I want for my swings and snatches and things like that. Crisp, athletic, beautiful. So if you're trying to hard style and hit 10 on the effort knob for 100 reps in a row, good luck. You're either using a really lightweight, or you are an android, and can maintain that work output. The definition of hitting a 10 on the effort knob is you're not getting many of those. And that's where things like Quick and the Dead and understanding the anti-glycolytic approach assumes that you can actually produce high power. And if you're not producing high power, some of those anti-glycolytic strategies may not apply as much. But where you want to get to on the snatch test is you want to get to that 70% effort, 65, 70% effort, crisp, athletic to standard, but it's only a 6 or a 7 on the volume knob. That you can do for set after set after set. You will not knock out 100 reps of hitting a 10 or 11 if the knob if this one goes to 11. So we should use that one. So that understanding those strategies, and then obviously, of course, getting dialed into your form. I've worked with some people recently, and just some technique changes really got them to the snatch test.
Cool. And how about any tips for mindset on the day of, or like right before? Either you know it or you don't, or
yeah. I mean, I hate to hear people say, well, I've never actually hit the snatch test, but here we go. And I'm like, you spent what? And you don't know that you can do this? You should have knocked off the snatch test before you got there. It's a known quantity. If it's a powerlifting meet and you're somebody who get that adrenaline response from being in front of the crowd, and you're going to get 2.5 to 5% more on your lift because you're that person that responds to the crowd. That's not what we're talking about, right? Very few people are going to get in front of a crowd and then do something that's a 5-minute glycolytic smoke fest and do better because they're in front of a crowd. So it should be a known quantity. And I've had people at certs walk up to me, what rep strategy should I use for I'm like, well, which one have you been using? I think you should do that. This is a really bad time to try something different.
Don't change it once you go in. I think that's gold right there. I definitely think, at least in my experience, having completed it the day before I got on a plane to go and do the certification, just
timing.
gave me enough. Yeah, I was like, I'm like, it's now or never. It's going to happen. And that was the first time. And like Roger said, we kind of like, banged our way through teaching ourselves how to do this stuff. And yeah, that's very good advice. And the rep scheme, I think, is important. If you have one, I personally basically stick to the 10-10, just so I don't have to do any math as I go along. But don't change that rep scheme. I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Can you talk to us about the concept of the sticky scapula? This is an article you wrote, I don't know how long ago. I came across, super helpful. I was actually having a discussion with a strong first coach who was intentionally keeping his shoulder blade down and back when he was pressing, hurting his shoulder, had no power. I'm trying to convince him, like, dude, you got to get that upward rotation. Wouldn't hear anything I was saying until I brought your name up. And then it was like a vampire seeing a crucifix. It was like, whoa, okay, well, if Brett Jones says so, then, I'm good. This is another idea I think gets lost in translation, and I think it's really important. So could you share? And has anything changed since you wrote that article?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head. And we can go 2 or 3 different directions in this, and we'll talk about some basic anatomy and function as far as how scapulothoracic articulation occurs and what should be occurring in normal shoulder mechanics. We can also talk about the rib cage and rib flare and some things that I personally think have been overemphasized as some different strategies and different groups have become more popular. So if we go just base anatomy first, the shoulder's only bony connection to your body is the SC joint, the sternoclavicular joint. Everything else is floating on muscle and ligament. So this joint right here is the only bony attachment to the body. That makes it a pretty important joint, right? And it's actually a fascinating joint. It's a saddle joint. So what you have is you have the clavicle coming into the sternum and a bunch of ligaments holding this thing in place, right? And so that SC joint can glide forward and back like this. It glides up and down very much like it's called a saddle joint. So it functions very much in that saddle joint. I happen to have been in a car accident in high school, and I had a seatbelt injury to my SC joint. If you've ever seen me press double bells, I have a very different path. You can even see it in my single bell press. I have a different path, right and left arm, because of this SC joint injury. So once we establish that we've got whatever the function of our SC joint is, that needs to glide and move and be able to facilitate all of these different motions. So we follow that out. We get to the AC joint where the acromion and where the clavicle and the scapula meet. That's an important joint. Anybody that's ever taken a fall on the end of their shoulder, or maybe their press groove gets off and you get that grumpy AC joint, it just doesn't feel good. Football players and people that take a fall on their shoulder will get a separated shoulder and have that ligamentous injury there. So we haven't even talked about the shoulder yet, right? There's all this other stuff. So the scapula, the way it sits on your rib cage, and so it's muscle on muscle, and you have this scapulothoracic articulation. If I'm just talking about abduction of the arm, for the first 30 degrees of abduction, there's really no movement from the scapula. What's happening there is the supraspinatus really is primarily responsible for assisting in that abduction along with the deltoid and stuff like that. But for the first 30 degrees or so, there's really no scapular movement. Beyond that point, you start getting 1 degree of scapulothoracic articulation, glide, and rotation for every, so it's 1 degree per 2 degrees of glenoid movement. So beyond 30 degrees, for every degree of movement, you get 2 degrees of movement, you get a degree of scapulothoracic articulation. So that normal scapulothoracic articulation. So now if we think about, now we've got the glenoid. So we've got the humerus that comes in and sits on the glenoid. So for the first 30 degrees, we don't get any movement. You can see that I keep my little tunnel there. And then as I progress beyond that, that scapula has to come with me in order to facilitate and maintain the force coupling mechanisms of the rotator cuff and the glenoid. And we'll talk about why that gets complicated here in just a minute. But so if you don't allow that upward rotation at a certain point, as you begin to rotate and then you stop this and this continues, do you see the problem? You're going to run into your acromion and you lose space and problems happen. So that normal and ideal sort of scapulothoracic articulation and that rhythm between that and the glenoid is essential to overhead movements. So kind of a long-winded way of saying, let your scapulas rotate. Now, the base that allows for good scapulothoracic articulation is not only the SC joint, but your thorax. Your rib cage has got to have proper mobility and the ability to allow that scapulothoracic articulation. The musculature that attaches on your scapula and helps control that, from the serratus anterior, which runs underneath, to all of the rhomboids and stuff like that. If your rib cage can't do, thoracic spine can't do what it's supposed to do, then your scapula will be challenged. You may lack that scapulothoracic articulation just because your T-spine won't do what it's supposed to do. And that's a whole other like anatomy geek thing where like you can compress somebody's chest 2.5 inches before you start breaking ribs. That's what you do in CPR, right? So there's tremendous mobility there in the ability to compress, but then there's also this bucket handle action that happens that allows us to breathe and move. So for that person who's heard, don't let your ribs flare, and they lock their rib cage down and then try to go overhead, depending on your shoulder structure, depending on your T-spine, you may get stuck. And if you're unwilling to let this go a little or produce the natural amount of T-spine extension that you need to facilitate overhead motions, if you're listening to this, you couldn't see the brilliant demo that I just did. So there's a normal amount of T-spine extension that's going to facilitate that scapulothoracic articulation, especially as we go into that end range of movement. So a smart scapula that is sticky will not wing. That inferior angle will not pop off the rib cage. You will not start producing upward elevation of the scapula. You will allow upward rotation of the scapula. And this is one of the confounding factors now is that because gymnastics has gotten so popular within training, there are some very specific ways that gymnasts talk about the blocking and strategies that they use on stiff arm, overhead, and long hang techniques to produce swings and handstands and vaults, things of that nature. There's a very specific way that they talk about how they position the shoulders. And they'll talk about elevating the shoulder, but they don't mean this. They mean allowing that shoulder to upwardly rotate and have that good force coupling mechanism that protects the shoulder. So you're not actively doing this, but it's like our static stomp. You're actively pushing against the weight and trying to elevate or maintain the position of that glenoid, the humerus in the glenoid. You're not finishing like this, right? So that's been a big misinterpretation. So I don't know. You guys are really nice. You really let me ramble, and thanks.
Well, you're
saying
welcome.
good stuff.
Hey, look, let's face it. They could hear us talk on any other video we got. So, it's important. It's important to get this information to the people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So stop intentionally trying to keep your shoulders packed when you're going overhead. Quit trying to keep your scaps from moving and locked back.
Absolutely. And that even to the point of the swing and the snatch and other things that we talk about packing the shoulders, I now prefer the term connect. Keep your shoulder connected. Because that intention of locking down and packing your shoulder, it stops power flow. It stops the proper movement through the body. Whereas if I just keep my shoulder connected, now I can have my shoulder move during my swing the way that it's supposed to, or the low pull sort of snatch technique. Packing the shoulder makes a lot of sense in a static carry, like a get up or an overhead walk, but keeping the shoulder connected through various movements and allowing that proper mechanics to happen is a better way to be.
Have you written that article yet?
Which one?
The difference between packing and connecting.
Maybe I should.
I think you should. Yeah, I think. Well, and I definitely think like that. That was like kind of my follow up was going to be, well, what would you say then? And I think that connected term, is very applicable, especially in those movements like swings and stuff like this, and trying to watch this disconnection from going forward or keeping that total packness and just finding that like sweet spot where it is connected. I think that's some really solid stuff, and you heard it here first, folks. So when you read this article, just know
it came out of this conversation.
That's right. Yep. For all however many people check it out, so it's all there.
I got one more quick question, and then we can open it up to other questions. If I don't hog all the time, and if I do, I don't care.
And I have one more question too. So maybe.
Okay. SFG3. What does that look like?
It doesn't exist right now.
Well, I know we're being hypothetical here, man. So, what would you? What concepts? What skills are there? Things that you wish you could teach or would teach? And if you were to think about doing an SFG3, are there things that you would immediately want to throw in there?
And this is just spitballing off the top of my head.
Sure.
We're not going to go in the direction of I took a 1-day workshop with a certain product, and which I'm not going to name. And it was 150 different exercises, X number of sets of about 150 different exercises. And the goal was basically to just make you sore so that the next day you'd wake up and go, man, I really got to use that. That's awesome. I'm past most of that. So we're not going to go in the direction of here's the 150 things you can do with a kettlebell. We are going to stick to our principles and our essentials. And as Pavel likes to say, we're an inch wide, mile deep. Now, having said that, the kind of detailed conversation we just had on shoulder mechanics is absolutely something that I would see as part of a level 3. It is getting more into, because I can, and whether we're talking from a functional movement screen perspective or whether we're talking from a strong first and kettlebell perspective, I can take somebody who doesn't understand the anatomy and make them a great instructor. I can have you efficiently screening people and spotting, putting people in the right categories, and you can have zero background in it. I can turn you into an instructor, even though you may not have that deep anatomical sort of information. But I think the movement towards that level 3 would be, okay, let's take that deeper dive. Let's look at what's happening at the hip. And, I'm about to do the squat webinar for the certified instructors, and we're going to talk about what's happening at the pelvis and the foot and during the squat, and why do we take on certain strategies in that. So that's where my head goes.
I'd sign up for that.
Yeah, definitely.
That and movie quotes. I think the other big part of SFG3 would be movie quotes.
That's right. You have to memorize like a given from the classics, and then there's a written test at the end. So, bring a sharp pencil.
Exactly.
All right. What's your favorite movie, Brett? That isn't my final question, but I'm curious.
We have to go by genre. But definitely if we're just talking comedy and quotable, Office Space.
Okay.
Caddyshack, Animal House. I mean, it's like, which of your kids are your favorite? And we all have an answer for that. We don't voice it, but we all have an answer for that.
Excellent. I think, and this is my last question, and what we can open it up. I'm just curious, and this is maybe it's like a little bit more personal, but as I've trained with kettlebells, I've noticed that like it's helped me with a bunch of mental fortitude and resiliency and things like that. There's so many benefits, and you're a cancer survivor. How do you feel your regular training prior to your diagnosis and leading up to your treatment helps support your recovery? And how did you plan your build back into your current daily routine?
So, going into treatment, and for those of you that may not know, February 20 of 2020, I was diagnosed with stage 3 primary tonsillar squamous cell carcinoma, inoperable. Went through 7 weeks of radiation and 2 chemo infusions, lost over 40 pounds over the course of treatment, was just shy of getting a PICC line, a feeding tube put in my stomach. So I struggled. And going into treatment, I was heavy. I'm a towering 5'9", but I was about 205, 206 going into treatment. I was heavy. And had I not had that extra tissue to sacrifice, had I not had the level of fitness that I had going in, I don't know that I would have made it through treatment. Towards the end in particular, I had a really rough time. In fact, I went in for my 3rd chemo infusion, and my medical oncologist, who is just wonderful, but she's very Eastern European, and she's definitely, she is very Eastern European. And so she walked in, I'm sitting there getting ready for my 3rd chemo infusion. She walks in and goes, yeah, we're not doing this to you today. You look bad. So when your medical oncologist says, we're not doing this to you today, you look bad, you don't look good. And so, but having the base of fitness that I had going in allowed me to suffer that sort of decline and loss. And then on the back end of that, they don't even give you your follow-up scans to check on where things are after radiation like this for 12 weeks, because the radiation is active in your system and in the area for weeks after the fact. And so it took a while for me to even recover to the point where I felt like I could train at all. And then it was a couple weeks of body weight work, and then it was back to the kettlebell. And, everybody has different baselines and different bases. For me, starting over at the 24 kilo for a lot of my work was starting over for me. It was the first kettlebell I ever owned. It's sitting, I keep pointing this direction because it's actually sitting right here. And so I initially started back with swings and get-ups, but then realized that I needed to rebuild more strength before I took myself into that sort of power zone. And so started back with some strength aerobics, just something that I knew that I could very easily coordinate with clean, press, squat, throw in a snatch, and do some things like that. And I'm now back to accomplishing workouts that I was doing pre cancer and treatment, and feeling pretty good. So but my attitude when I started training again is I knew it was going to be a year-long process to get back. It wasn't something where I was going to set myself up for, whatever goal in 3 months. It was, I know this is going to take a year. And it did pretty much take a year before I felt like, yeah, I'm back. I'm like John Wick. People have been asking me if I'm back.
Quotable movies. Here we go. Thanks for sharing that. And I can say that, just the theme and watching your journey through whatever you shared on social media along the way, and an appreciation for that patience, and touching on the point that going into it with a good fitness level and having the muscle mass and those sorts of things, I think that's very valuable for people to hear, especially nowadays with, the health situations that affect everybody. And it gets glossed over a lot, for other treatments, when the reality is, if you an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or something like that. So,
Alan Cosgrove talks about it, that, and, he was actually somebody that was a tremendous support and help to me as I was going through my cancer treatment and journey. He's a 2-time cancer survivor. And the last treatment he had is basically where they radiation and chemo you to basically cellular death, and then they give you a stem cell transplant. So you are reborn into a new person, basically. And he, that obviously it was an intense course of treatment to get him to that point. And he talks about it, and he had a post recently, actually, where he was talking about it. There were people there who needed the treatment, who could not receive it because they were not fit enough to survive the treatment. And so, we have this baseline of what our daily lives ask of us. And for most of us, it's pretty low. We don't have pretty cushy lives typically, not all the time. And there's certainly people out there and one of the only memes that I actually think is true is everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about. So, don't be too judgy. And so, but basically our lives do not have that much physical challenge and requirement typically. Well, you go through something like cancer, your physical requirements and challenge just went way above what you're used to dealing with, and training helps close that gap. Right. So yeah, you can be comfortable in your life, and you can think that you're doing okay because you're making it through your daily life, but your daily life doesn't include a whole lot of struggle or challenge. Yeah. I'd rather be ready for more.
Yeah. And I think for coaches listening, there's so much, to the client's goals of pressing a 48 or completing said snatch test and things like that, or looking really good naked and all these things. But one of the greatest things that you can get is a phone call from somebody that survived a heart attack or their cancer diagnosis because you had got them physically fit, or they were able to take that on, and should be a motivation for somebody to do the exercise, even though we have all these other factors we all love to glom onto because they make us feel good or look good. The reality is there's more depth there. Anyways, that took a weird turn for okay, cool. Anybody have any questions? Very good. Nobody chatted me any questions. Don't worry, Brett. This is, people get shy, and that's okay. And maybe we answer
them
all
out there. I mean, I've got hair care tips. I've got, I'll take questions on anything.
All right. So a lot of the stuff you gave us really good advice. Your hair care tips might not be the best. I'll have them, but they might not be the best.
Well, I as I tell my little niece, I say I have summer hair. Some are here and some aren't.
Yeah. It's like, hey, some are here, some are there, some are gone. You know what I'm saying, Roger?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Roger never had hair. So, at least up here.
Yeah. I mean, that looks like by choice though. That looks like a nicely shorn head. So,
well, the bald and the beautiful is what we'd like to live by. No worries.
As it's known, the strength coach haircut.
That's right. I keep asking my wife, can I just shave it off all my hair? I mean, like, this will be so much easier. And she's like, no, but hey, I feel lucky. Anyways, Brett, where can people find you if they need to check out some of your stuff, or where do you want to direct people to get at you?
Articles show up on strongfirst.com. I'm on the forum, answer some questions there. My Instagram, I was going to say Insta.
You got yourself.
Yeah, I'm where cool things go to die. So if I refer to something in a certain way, that's pretty much assured that that's no longer cool. But Instagram at Brett Jones SFG. I'm on Facebook, but I'm not doing much there. I have my little Applied Strength LLC. That's one of the groups on our business pages on Facebook that you can find. Put out some articles on functional movement systems, or functionalmovement.com. And I do some things for the certified instructors there as well. So I'm around.
He's around. Easy guy to check out his stuff. And definitely, if you're looking for some workouts to do, hit those strength aerobics. Those are always fun. And
I do have a little ebook project that I'm getting closer to, dangerously close to putting a bow on. Of course, then I have to film 40 videos in order to hyperlink to them. But the actual writing process has been going pretty well. So we'll see. I got some people taking a look. So,
are you an iPhone user or Apple user? All right, yeah. Sweet. For anybody else listening, go ahead and hit up the App Store and download Bells by Iron Revival. It's a training app that I think you'll enjoy. And Brett, I'm gonna put a couple of your strength aerobics in, and I'm gonna send them to you. And I would love to get your feedback on it. And it's built for training with kettlebells, and it's really heightened my training experience, and definitely got me ready for Strong First Level 1, and which why I may perform the best snatches of my life for 105 minutes. Yeah. So thanks, awesome, Brett, for joining us. Roger, you got anything else?
I have a lot of other questions. We'll have to do this again. If you will consent.
You got one more.
I can't. I can't even decide. I've got like a page of 15.
maybe you'll have us again, Brett, and if so, we'll get at you. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and be sure to check out Brett where he listed, and you can get at us obviously if you see this on our YouTube channel or our Instagram at The Iron Revival. And thanks for listening. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brett.